All right, so we're going to get started. Here, we're going to start here and then go on. All right, so hopefully everybody saw the extension. So try to use the time to get up to speed for the project, and also make sure that that you keep some time away for the assignment 6 that we're going to start today. Okay, so I'll finish with the course and then we'll go through the lab. So the course is just to introduce a little bit the events and the things that we need to do transitions in charts, and also motivate a little bit why you would like to do that. So that part, I think we saw it already with the first the pre-attentive features and the continuity of visual features. So now we're going to see how to do those transitions with D3. So the basic mechanism that we're going to leverage is again the browser that allows you to track events that happen. So that can be people clicking in the browser or people moving the mouse over some part of the SVG. And as soon as those events happen, we want to have some type of notification and do one of several things that can be to update the data. So we want to change the data set that we're showing in part or in all. We might need to update the data join, do something different, depending if we want to do, we change the marks or we change the form. If we are, if the data set range, domain, sorry, changes, and or the range for the fact, if you're doing responsive, then you need to go and update the scales, and at least for the range changes, we've seen this already last time we're doing the responsive visualization. And finally, how do you make things look smooth so that people can actually visually track what is going on in the display, and follow the data, basically how these events are handled. So JavaScript is providing you with in the browser, okay? Because here we're leveraging, so JavaScript is just the programming layer, but so if you just have a node app, obviously these events don't make any sense. They're only making sense in the context of the browser. And so here I put in green those that you might want to use. So such as the focus event, maybe the most used are the keyboard events, the mouse event, the drag and drop sometimes, less with charts, I would say. You might want to start some type of animation on a chart. In that case, you will need what are called the media events. And obviously, the resize event for the SVG and or HTML, depending on what your chart is built with. And again, we've seen an example of that. You remember that we saw on resize, and then when we had the on resize for the chart that would change in style and or in form when you resize the browser, then we use that event. Yeah. So those are the main one. Okay. So the browser has one thing that is called the event loop for handling event. So basically, what it does is that this is the way the browser implements events that are triggered at some point in the DOM, and that's a standard. So the way it works is with what are called event listener. So you attach to the DOM tree, any of the nodes, some type of event listener. So that's going to just wait for an event to happen, and if you registered with a particular event, and that happens, then it is going to get a notification, and at that node, you can decide what you want to do. Yeah. So yeah. So basically, one node in the tree is going to issue the event. Whether I'm clicking on an SVG rectangle, and so that creates an event. And then on the SVG, I can say, okay, I'm going to put a listener there, and whenever the click happens, I'm going to have a callback function that is going to tell me, oh, this bar was clicked. And there you can update the code. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. So the event listener is a terminology that is there just to name the callback function, right? That is being set up on the element that listens for events. And handler is what the code that you write that is going to handle the events. Now the events, the way they travel is encapsulated in this term there, the propagation. And you have two different phases. So the first one is the capture. So there is the capture phase and the target phase and the bubbling phase. Okay, so the capture, so the bubbling is the default. So by default, when an event is happening, say here in this table, somebody clicks the TD, and so the event goes up the tree until it finds a listener, and that's the target. So whenever you get to the target, you're in the phase 2 here. And that's where you have your event listener, and you do what you need to do. Then things can go the other way around if you want them to. So that depends on how you configure it. By default, you do the bubbling, and if you don't put any event handler for the capture, then that's going to be ignored. Now, these steps here, the browser takes care of that. You just want to know that by default we're going up. So the parent is usually to handle things. But if you want to handle things at the level of the children, then you need to use the other phase, that is the capture phase, where you go down the tree as opposed to up. Yeah, and then so obviously you can implement hierarchical data structure in the DOM, and that allows you to handle events hierarchically. Is there something else that I want to say here? No, I think that's it. Yeah, so those you don't need to know exactly how it works, just to have this model in your mind, because those things are in the particular is going to have some defaults, and defaults happen to be the same as the browser, which is the public phase, which is usually the one that you end up using. But you'll see some pieces of code where they want to handle the children. In that case, they need to do things using the capture phase, and so you need to do some setup there. So here is an example of bubbling that is very simple, right? So the event happens at TD, and here we have a listener on the row, and so whenever the event is emitted, it propagates up in the public phase. That is again the default, and in the row we have a handler that can do the job of, say, highlighting the table row, right? So here it's an example with a table, but with SVG is exactly the same, right? No hierarchy in the SVG. So usually what you do is that you handle it at the level of the SVG element. Depending on what you do, that's usually the thing that you do, but you can also add a group and use the hierarchy with the group. And we've seen how to add groups in SVG with the axis, right? So this is the same example with the capture where you go down. That's less useful. Now, these events, they don't just happen because you click. There is a whole system to do the event handling in the browser that is called the event loop. So what it is basically a queue where the event listener are set up. And whenever there is an event, the bubbling phases are implemented through this queue and capture phases, and things end up going to the right listener by that. So you don't need to know much about that, but you see oftentimes in the documentation that they talk about event loop. So I just put it there so you know what it is. So how do we implement these events in the page? So we saw the example with the resize with d3, where we would do d3.on. So here we're going back one step and looking at how you do it in HTML. So you have different way of doing it, and they have different names. The first one, that is the oldest one that was implemented, is inline code, where you have an attribute of the element that is specific to one event. So here we have the on-click. So that model is called the DOM level 0 inline because it's inline. Level 0, don't ask me why, but this is the first one that they came up with, and they thought that level 0 was a good name for it. Maybe because it was the level 0 implementation, and that's more or less what it looks like. So that's useful, but for us, with D3, right? So we don't want to go and write these into the SVG with D3 to add these attributes. Rather, what we do is that we go all the way to the level 2. But let me explain the intermediate thing here. That is the level 0 traditional. So it's basically doing things with an API where you can select elements. So this is standard JavaScript. So the document is the main document that you have in the page. So here what we're doing is defining a callback function, and that is going to be the event handler. And then we set up the on-click event after we can reference with the JavaScript the element. Now you can see that this is a little bit more flexible because this is visible in code. And that's something that would work for us with the level 2 is basically an extension of that, where instead of doing one event handler per element, you can do both. So this is nice because you can say I want to do an on-click and I want to do something else. And you see here some example code setting up here 2 functions and adding 2 event handler here on the same div for the same event, right? Because here, if you do it, you would override the function, and then you have a different handler, and you cannot handle 2 click events. But here you have a kind of stack of events, event handler, and they're going to get called in turn. Now you see, you remember what I told about the direction in which the events are traveling. So here in JavaScript you use this add event listener, and then you have the third argument here that is about whether you're using the capture or not. So the default is false, which means that you're using the bubbling phase. Yeah, and so this is not giving a third argument. If you want to use the capture, you need to be explicit and say this event is going to happen when we're traveling down. Okay, so 99% of the time you will not use that, but you want to know that it's there because D3 does more or less the same thing. Before we get there, here we saw how you do it with JavaScript. But there are the easiest way to implement some interactivity in charts is with just CSS. And what everybody does is they maybe overuse it, is to use the Uber event as a pseudo class. So a pseudo class because it is not really a class. It's an event specifier that is on an element. So here the block quote is a type of div that you see here like this in the page, and that is style and the standard HTML. And we're using the Uber here that is a pseudo class that implements the behavior when this block quote is over, meaning that you're going over with the mouse. And here what we want to do is to set some property that are going to be executed when this is active, meaning that I'm on top of it. If I'm not on top of it, then it's going to revert to whatever you set in the page. And so here you see that we're setting background color orange red and the color white. Okay, and this I have implemented it here, and you see what is happening. Yeah. So in the page you can go and play with it if you want, and go and change the code, but yeah, it's that simple. And this is useful because sometimes people want to, you have a lot of bars or whatever, and you want to highlight the one that people are looking at for a reason or another. And so that's often used. Now with D3, how do you do these events? So obviously you can do the CSS thing there just in any D3 chart, but D3 allows you to tap into the JavaScript event handling level 2 model. And the way it does is with this dot on. So basically, it's the same thing. You see the signature of the function, you pass the event, that, and this is the same as we saw. Those are the standard events that are from implemented in the browser. The second argument is the event handler. And the third argument, if you add it, would be the use capture flag. Okay? Whatever goes in there is things that mostly you know. So if you want to go and select another, if I click on a bar, then maybe I want to color another bar in a different way, then you know how to do that with the selection and style. And obviously you need to know something about the event. And so the under here, the event under returns this event. Now this event object, if I remember well, is not exactly the event object that JavaScript has, but obviously it has the information that you need because D3 adds something to it, but it has all the information that you need to know what it is and where it's coming from, and yeah, and so here, for instance, what is implemented is that we're looking at the event, and we've set it up on these two buttons. This is the button 0, and so this one is going to get triggered when I use the upload key there with click, and the V1 if I just click on it. So so here I'm clicking, but nothing is happening. Okay, and then you see that whenever I click with the modifier, that is the meta key. Here, that is in Windows, it would be the Windows key. Then I end up with modifying this event, and you see I set up here the color red or light green, depending on how this gets clicked. So I think that if we're clicking on the P0, then we're setting it to red. Oh, I think I just switched the flag in alternance. But yeah, that part I think it's obvious. Now if I click, so here there is a mouse over that is probably implemented with CSS. So if I click this one, we're going to here, and it says that it's a P1 event. You can see it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The only thing here is that the this that is the context in the function in the under is set up to the current element. Okay. So here when I do select this, it is the one where that is receiving the event because we're in the listener. Okay. So don't get mixed up with that. If you need to have information about who sent it, you want to look in the event. If you receive it, then you're set automatically to this context, and this is done by D3. All right. Okay. So now when you have a data join, how do you do that? Right. So here I've implemented basically the mouse over that you would implement with the CSS, but I'm doing it with D3 in the data join. And so you see that the way it's done in the code is basically you do your regular data join, and then you add a dot on. So here I'm doing a mouse over. That is, I'm moving my mouse on top of the elements, and in there I have the event handler, and I can do what I want. Okay. With the caveat that you see that here, in addition to the event, you get the D that is the datum that gets passed around as you do the data join, right? similar to what we've done until now. So here I'm passing up here the data, right? Yeah, so that's basically it. Again, this here is for this particular bar where the event handler is set up, and I think that's it. Yeah, here this is an ID that is attached to, I don't know if it's a div of there, or yeah, we're in the div, so it's a text, right? And so we're selecting the text and changing the text that you see appearing there. Okay, so that's not much more complicated than that. If you want to do the CSS thing, it's not completely automatic because you need to do the mouse over, meaning you're entering, but then when you do mouse out here, you see that I want to revert to the blue color because this is actually just setting it, but we need to unset it if you want to remove the highlight. And I'm also removing the text on top. And that's the mouse out that is at the bottom. Okay, so updating the data, we're going to do this in the lab. Data are arrays, so we already saw to do most of these. We're going to play a little bit more with the code so that you're familiar with the arrays and how to use them. And now we're going to see how we play with the selection. So selection in the sense of the selection in the data join. So up until now, we did a data join based on array order, right? So we have our data that is always an array. And the only thing that we know to do is to put things in the page if they're not there already. If they're there, we usually don't do anything. If they're not there, we add them. But we don't know how to swap things around. So I want to change my first data point with the second one. Or I want to remove a data point. And so typically the example is here, right? So I have A, B, C, and then A, B, and D. So A, B are staying there, but you see that the bars are different. And I want to change the length of the bar based on the data. We don't know how to do that, right? Then the C, supposing that it's already in the page, we want to remove it and we add to other things. So all this is done with the selections in the data join. And the way, so this is a little bit a motivation. The reason we need this is that if we want to use the same graphic and change some of the data, because say it's a time series and we're showing a different period of time, then what we need to do is update discounts, but we need to do it based on the data and in a way that that people can visually understand that that this A is still the same, that so it's the same category, but the count has changed. Same thing for the B. Then you want people to understand that C is gone and A is appearing. If you just flash them, it's kind of difficult to realize it. Again, here it's a simple example, but even with a simple example, you see all the look across that you need to do. If this is happening in the same graphic, you need to memorize what is happening here, and then remember what happened here. But then you saw that there is this thing that is not nice, that our brain has a short-term visual memory. And in the swap, we might get things lost, right? We cannot, our brain is not able to track things. So we're going to see how to do that. So the basic mechanism that allows you in D3 to track things that enter or exit or need to be updated is the selection. And so up until now, we played with the enter selection. That's why we have in the data join, we put enter. And what you get from the enter is the elements that need to enter the page. Yeah. So you guessed it. If the update is the elements that needs to be updated, and the exit is those that need to go out. Okay. Now, if you do it just based on array size, is not really going to work, and we're going to see why. So the selection is done based on array position, right, by default. Now, if you want to track things, you need to index basically the data, right? Which you can do if you have your data as an object, and then one of the property is relating to what it is, right? But that means that you don't want to rely anymore on the array order. You want also to use that index to do the data join, right? And so not surprisingly, you'll need a mechanism to do the data join with keys, where the keys are coming from objects that are into your array. So we're going to see how to do that. And when you implement, you need all these different types of selections. So again, they are the update, the enter, and the exit. You want to do it in a certain order that makes sense. And so there is a pattern that usually people follow that is called the general update pattern that you see here. So you do your data join, then and that here that means that I just say selection the data, I set up my data, okay? And I don't call the enter, but I look at what needs to be updated at this point, okay? So eventually you will need to implement the mechanism that allows D3 to understand what is already there in the page and what needs to be updated. Because the only up until now we just look at we don't look at the D3 doesn't look at the value, it just looks at the order, right? And that is the counting argument. If there are two objects in the page and you have an array of size 2, then for him nothing needs to is changing. Okay, so we'll need to tell him to give him that information. So then with the enter here, you actually need to call it explicitly with selection.enter. Okay, and that's what we've been doing until now. And so there you can create whatever element that needs to be added. Then you can call this function here that is a merge. And what it does is that it takes these two elements, these two selections, the update and the enter. Okay, so again, think about the Venn diagram that is here. So the merge, what it does is that it allows you to work on these elements and these elements at the same time. Update and enter. Okay, and sometimes it's useful to do that. And then the exit. Now the exit is in the general update pattern. It's last. So you want to remember this order. But sometimes it makes sense to exit things earlier, and so you can move this around. Okay. Okay. So how do we make sense of what needs to be updated in the selection in the data join using something else than just the order in which things appear in the page and in the data. Okay, so the way you do it is that if you here you have an example that is data set, and what we're doing right now is that we're mapping we're mapping what is in the selection, meaning what we look at the page. If we have these five elements here in the page, then they're indexed from 0 to 4. And our data is here, right? And it's also indexed 0 to 4. And so we do the data join 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. So in this case, there is nothing that that needs to happen there. And so we're stuck with this model of doing things where we can only add elements if they're not already in the page. Now, if we do, again, sorry. Okay, and here, what is important to see is what is on top there. We do selection.data equals data set. Okay, so we just say this is our array, go figure it out. And the only thing that the D3 does is that it looks at the order. Okay, so if we swap these two here, we're stuck. It's not going to work. Even if we use the update, it will not be able to figure it out because it doesn't look at the data. Okay. D3 actually stores the data in the element. There is a variable that is underscore data or datum, probably datum. So it's stored in there. By default, it's not going to go and look at it. Okay. So the way to do the mapping, where in case you swap here, is to set your data with some type of property that can be used to track what it is that that item is related to. Okay. And so what you do is that you do the same thing as you would with a regular array, but then you add here a function that is going to allow you to do the mapping. Okay. Yeah, and so we're going to see this how it's done in practice, but that's the gist of it. So here, what we want to do is do the data join with some type of key. Okay, specifying some key so that D3 can figure out how things are mapped between what is in the page and what is into your data array. So that if you take your data array and you swap things around, then it's able to tell you what needs to be updated, what is entering, what is exiting, and you can access it with the update, enter, and the exit selections. Yeah? Yeah, okay, good. I think that this is it. Yeah, so what is written in green there just says in a shorter way what I just expressed. That is as soon as you add this key, you can do updates anywhere in the data array. When before you could only, you're just relying on the order, and so you cannot do updates at all. Yeah, and the way it does is that this overlap between the old and the new value is possible because, again, D3 is storing the information about what data it does. If you add something in the page, it's going to remember the actual values here for the page based on the key. All right. So the scales and axes, we've seen this. So obviously you just need to start by updating the scale. The axes are made from the scale, or it is configured from the scale. So you want to stick to that order. There is not much to say there. So animating translations. So we're going to see again how you do it with CSS, then JavaScript, and then with D3. So this one here is with CSS. And so the CSS allows you to add transition properties to an element. And so here we have a div, that is the orange bar that is up there. And we're setting up some transition so that whenever we enter the bar, then yeah. So yeah, so this is the initial state, right? And the transition is there because when we exit the bar, we want to go back. So let me start with the Uber. So when we enter the bar and we go through the class Uber, then what we want is that we're going to wait for these are in milliseconds, so 1 second. Then we want to transition during 3 seconds. The properties that we want to transition are the width and the background color. So we want to change those from whatever they are set in the initial state. And the way we want to transition is with what is called a timing function. So this is how fast you want to start moving at the beginning. So you have all sorts of functions there. You can do Bezier curves. You pick yours, and I think you have a slide that shows this. So here we're using ease in and out that is start slow and end slow, and that's about it. This is the endpoint for the width. We want 960 pixels. You see that we're starting at 480. That's about here, half of the page. And we want to change to this cornflower blue from dark orange. Okay. So I'm going to just hover here, and you see that it's happening. Yeah. So no questions? No questions. Okay, so initial state again, we just set it up with the transition properties and whatever properties we want in the initial state. And then you need to set up the properties for the Uber event here that you want to see at the end. And obviously, when you get out, it goes back to the original one. Okay, and here the timing is based on here. It's 1,000, 3,000. Okay. Okay, so here I think is another example how you do it with SVG, and that's basically pretty much the same because the CSS also applies to SVG. So it's exactly the same example. I didn't put the text there, but it works exactly the same, right? And same explanation. Okay, so the transition functions you have 10s that you can pick from. So here is just a sample of them. Most of the time, you know, the easing out is good enough, or just the default that I think is linear. So easing is how things happen in time, and that's what these functions are about. They're functions that tell you what is the speed over time at which the animation needs to play. Yeah. Okay, now again, same example, but this time with D3. So we're going to use the dot on. And so this is building on the previous example that you saw that you need to do a mouse over and then a mouse out to get back to the other state. And here where you see, so here, yeah, it doesn't matter. You won't be able to know which model it's using because it's different events, but D3 is using the model level 2 for the event handler. And so the code, you want to go back and forth with the previous slide to see how it's done. Here I changed the easing, but it's basically the same thing. So we set up the event on the mouse over. This is the event handler. The event handler for the bar here is set up to ourselves, right? So we select ourselves here, and we need to do this because this function here doesn't know what's going on outside, right? But this is just a function, a callback function that gets called by the page when my mouse moves over the bar, and if I want to know where I am, I'm inside this element, because this function gets attached to the event handler for the bar, so that's attached to the bar, but I can access it with this. So in D3, to set up transition, you need to call dot transition. Yeah. And as you can see, that is working on the selection. That's why I need to do a D3 select before. So you're transitioning the element that you're going to select. The rest of the thing are just paralleling what you do in the CSS, right? So we set a delay with a dot delay, a duration with dot duration. And here we're acting on the result of dot transition, that is the transition itself. So we're configuring the transition. So we're using the chaining syntax to configure the transition, right? So at this point, we have a transition object, and we set up its properties, similar to what we just did in the CSS. And we, here in the mouse over, we say what is the width that we want at the end. That is the 960 that you remember from before, and we set up the field. Okay. So yeah, it's good to know to do it in CSS, because it's exactly the same. It gives you the blueprint to do it with D3. The mass out, just exactly the same thing, right? There is not much else to use. I didn't put the easing out, so maybe things will just jump back. Let's see what happens. So we're going to get the default. So you see that it does this this bumpy thing, right? And so the default seems to be kind of linear. Okay. And then if I go like this, yeah, that seems to be linear, okay? Because again, I didn't put the easing. If I do the bounce, then it's going to also the bounce back, which is not usually a good thing to have bouncing things in a visualization, but that's it. Important to remember, you can only have one transition at the time per element. Okay, what it means is it's obvious. You cannot have the bar do two things at the same time, right? So if you set up two transitions, then D3 decides what he wants to do. Most likely, he's going to drop one. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, and you can use it within the data join, and we're going to see this in the examples in the homework. And I think this is it. So we're done with the class, and we can start with the, maybe we do a little pause, and then we'll start with the lab. Okay, so we have a good hour to finish up the lab. The lab is just playing out with these things with simple examples.
I don't have time. So this is what I have. Is that what you're asking? Like for the bar chart, and we add the chart here, and I'll place another chart, but it's I only do it.
Yeah, I'll try to address it. Yeah, okay. So there are questions about the. I'll try to address this during the pause. Regarding AX, the homework. So make sure that you read what we wrote here in the AX channel. So here you have a suggested outline for the website. So you have one page for the table, and the table is the one that you have created in assignment 5. If I remember well, you need to load things from with D3, so you just reuse the exact same code in this page. The bar lollipop, so those are also from the assignment 5, but there are also some of these that we have done in the assignment in the lab X. So example 0, 2, and 3. So again, these are just pieces of code that you can just take and reuse. Okay. The bubble chart is from A5, and we only have one bubble chart that is from there. So you want a tab or a page for that. So we're doing a multi-page app as opposed to a single-page app. And the last one is line and area charts. So I think that this one the reusable area chart from AX, and then you want to add the responsive line sparkline chart also from AX. Okay, so how do you do this? So the simplest way to do it is that you restart from view app because it's working. So you need to make sure that you can get it to work and that you understand how to debug it. And debugging, again, the simplest is just to do it in the browser, okay, with a breakpoint. So you take it, you make sure that you can go and put a breakpoint in one of the D3 charts, and that you can trace things in that way. And then once you're happy with that, what you do is that you take it, you take the view app, you make a copy, and you put it into AX app. Okay. So once you're at this point, the complexity is just about creating the pages. So what I would do is that I would do one at a time. I would add the table page, starting by the closest thing that is already in there. And you see that all these charts are going to be D3 charts. Yeah. So just take the D3 chart example. You make a copy of it, and you add another root for it, and you put it in the menu so that you can access it table, what is it? Table page, okay? As you do, be careful. You don't want to call things, you don't want to call at the top of the template. I think that there is I don't remember if it's class or something, but you need to give the name of the template, and then also in the model where you define there is a name property for this component, right? So if you're starting from the D3 chart, it's going to say D3 chart, and I think that this needs to be lowercase. Okay. So for the table, if you start for the table, don't put table there, because you'll get an error. Okay. So call it table chart or my table, whatever you like. Okay, but not table. This is because the way you use this D3 chart here is you're saying D3 chart, right? this way. In the template, that's how we instantiate this component, right? And that's exactly what we do in the reusable charts. For the reusable chart, we do this, right? Now this is a page, but the view sees it the same way. It's a component. A page is a component. So in this mind, you should be able to do this. If you call it table, then you want to write this. And it's going to tell you what do you want from me. There is already a table that exists in HTML. So what should I do? Okay. So don't call it table because otherwise it is going to get confused. The CLI when it tries to compile the template. So once you have this, you need to go in the root. You remember there is the router. I think it's index.js, and you just take the one from D3, you duplicate, and then you change it to make a root for your table, so that you can go and test it, and it works. I click in there, and I see exactly the same page. Okay, so you need to be 100% sure that you're good with that. Once you're good with that, then you need to see, you want to simplify this D3 chart. So the D3 chart is going to have the template, right? Then there is some import for D3. I think it's something like this, star, I don't remember, syntax, but from D3, something like this. This one, you want to keep it, obviously. And then you have the definition of the controller. I don't remember how this is spelled, but this is an object, right? And in there, you have the mounted. Okay. Now, and if you have the mounted, at some point, you have also data. Okay. Now, first the mounted. What we're doing in the homework is that I show you how to put things in the store. Here, the charts are going to be just in this page, so there is no need to reuse the data. Yeah. So you can just keep the code that is the d3.json that loads the data, right? Something like this data, and then this is where you put your code for the chart. Okay, and this code you just cut and paste what you have. Yeah. The only thing that you need to be paying attention to is the CSS that comes under. So I'm going to move it here. On the bottom, there is this style, right? And it should say scope. Right? So if you have CSS that is on the chart elements that are dynamically created, you want to do what I'm doing to put these three things in front, otherwise it won't work. Okay? This is because the view generates, I think I said it, but it's worth repeating. It tries to generate unique IDs for the CSS classes and the IDs that you create, so that there is no conflict. But it doesn't know about the one from D3 because they're generated dynamically. And so if you don't do this, then what happens is that whatever property you're going to put there is going to create some ID with a random number, and the one that the property is not going to match the property that you're referencing in your code. Okay, but if you do this, then it doesn't touch them, and then D3 finds it. Okay, so basically exactly the same CSS, but you need to put this thing before. Okay, so just as in the example, and I think that that's about it. Yeah, maybe the last thing is some of the examples, they're in files, right? The way to do it here, you could do an import of the JS, but that's complicated. you probably don't want to go there. Just take the code from the file and you slap it in here. Okay. If you have multiple charts, then you just have multiple df3.json blah blah, and then the code is in there, right? The data, make sure that you put them in public, inside public. Okay. So each time you do something, just start. You put it in. You check. You put the file name of the public. You make sure that the file is there. You check that the data is there. Okay. Don't just look at the page and say, "Oh my God, it's working." You just look at each one of the steps. Your code is working from A5. So the only thing that you need to do is make it work here. Okay. So make sure that the page works. Make sure that the mounted can get access to the data that you put in public. And then it should work. If you still have a problem with the code, is that you did something that you shouldn't have. Okay. Okay, can you speak out? Yeah, so we're not talking about the design there. We're just talking about the charts, the D3 charts that you've done. Okay, so you're asking if there is conflict between styles, between different charts that we have. Now, A5, all the charts are, so the only thing that can happen is that there is a conflict between the style in the lab and the style in the A5, right? Yeah, so in that case, you know, to resolve it, if you want to resolve it, I don't care. But the way to resolve is that you need to create unique IDs, right? And or classes that don't interfere. So you need to rename things if you really want to do it. But as long as it's you know, the code is working, if it's just the color that is not exactly the same, it's fine. Okay. Okay, I think we're good with that. So right, once you have the table page, the others you just restart. You go on from the table page, right? Because it's going to be line ready to go. You just need to remove the code for the table and put you go on with the bar lollipop charts. Okay, so I'll stop this and then we'll go back to the where do I have it? I have the lab, and I think I opened it somewhere, but again, too many windows. Okay, so the lab 6, the lab 6, there is not much to see. I think it's just yeah. So I'll skip. I won't show you the lab 6, but there are 7 exercises. Actually, wrong. There are 6 because I removed one. I removed the histogram. Okay, so I just need to find the starter. Where did I put it? This is. I don't know why I have 2 here. Oh, okay, I got it. I opened the wrong thing. CDA6 starter. Okay. Okay, so I'll put back this on screen so that you can see. I'm not doing any magic here. Code minus n dot. All right. Okay, so now we're good. So npm install. I already installed this thing, so I'm going to skip this step, but let me redo it. Okay, npm run serve. Okay, so everybody can see here. So, okay, Okay, maybe we take a quick look at the assignment before we start with the lab. So in case you have questions. So this is going to be similar to the EX6. So you're going to have filtering operation and then subsetting operations on a data set that you pick. And what you want to do is provide smooth transitions that make sense between every combination. Okay. So before you do this, take a look at EX6, which we're going to go through now. Yeah. Again, this one I removed here. So things have shifted. So we'll go to the lab with EX1. So here we're just building up with the element that we saw in class. So I'm going to do maybe a first of the few, so that you understand what is asked here. And here I'm just asking you play around with this so you understand what the results are and how it works. Okay. So for all of this, you need to open up the page, and you'll see that there are the little backpacks there, and whenever there is the backpack, you need to do something in there. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Okay. And we want PEX1 in the lab. Is that the right one? Yes. Okay, here we are. Okay, so here you see we have the array 0 that is set, and I'm just asking that you put the value, okay, next to it. So you can go and do console log, which is going to take you forever. So, but I've been careful with the name of the variable, so you can just go here and say array 0, and then you see it there. You can cut it and paste it here, okay? So this one is easy. Now this one, we're setting array 1 to array 0. And the reason I'm asking you what is it equal, obviously is going to be equal to the same thing. But the question is it the same object or is it different? So here we can go and see array 1. You see it's the same, right? If I look at the value, it's going also to be the same. Array 0 of 0. And it's true, right? But if I say I have, so this is with array, so so far it seems to jive. But sometimes you want to have arrays that are not exactly the same. So here an array is a reference to something. And when we do an assignment, only the data is not duplicated. We're just setting the same reference, yeah? So probably if I do a triple equal there, maybe not with this, but okay. Now with array doesn't seem to be a problem, but it's probably a problem with objects. So anyhow, if you really want to create a copy, then this is one way to do it. Okay, so here you can see array 2. So if you do array 2, then you see that they're not the same thing. Yeah, you see it? Right, array 2 is not equal. So the triple equal is exactly the same object, right? And it's not. And it's not because we're doing, first we turn it into a string. So obviously you can do like this if you want, right? So this is a string. And then we turn it back into an object with JSON parse. So this object doesn't know what the original object is. So we have a new object that is there, right? So the rest of the stuff is just about using other function and understand when things when the array is different or when you're actually overriding the same array. And this is important because as you do operation on the array, probably you need to decide if you want to override or if you just want to have a copy. Okay, so slicing is useful for getting parts of the array. And it doesn't work in place, right? So if I do this one here, array 3, okay, you're going to see array 3. You see that it's like this, which is the same thing as array 0. But then if I go and check, why do I need to retype this? If it's the same, it's not the same, okay? So it's an array with the same values, but it's not the same object. So slice returns a new array with whatever is in there. Now, if you do slice of 0, you see what we're getting is a copy. So this is a way of copying the array, and that's basically the same result as running the JSON parse, JSON stringify. Yeah, you get a new object with the same data, but in a different way. So get familiar with that. I put here the way it works. The first parameter is the start index of the array where you want to start your slice, and the end is the last one. Keep in mind that in JavaScript we always start at 0, as in Python. If you use negative, I think this is similar also to Python. You're starting to count from the end of the array index as opposed to from 0, right? So you can go through it. The min and the max, you already know how they work, and the extent also is just there for you to see it. So here I'm doing another copy for array 7, and here we're doing the sorting. Now the sorting, the question is if it sorts in place or if it creates a new array. And sorting sorts in place, okay? So if you want to preserve the order on your data because you're going to go back to it for some reason, then you first need to make a copy of your array, and then you want to call sort on the array, okay? And you don't need to return anything because that's what happened. And you see that oftentimes when you do a sort, so the sort, what it takes is a compare function, because it needs to compare 2 by 2. And oftentimes you need to do this in different, right? And most of the time you want to sort ascending or descending. And so D3 gives you already a compare function to do that, right? So the default, what do you think the default does? The D3 descending for the sort? Quickly. D3 works with arrays, right? So it's going to be based, it's going just to look based on the order of the array. We don't give him a key to work with, right? So it's going to just assume that you have an array of values. So it's going to do the sorting based on that, right? But now if you have an array of objects with keys, then we need to provide that so that the sorting is meaningful, right? So depending on what is the type of the data, then you obviously descending is going to have some defaults. I think that the default is you see here is Unicode for if it's a string, and otherwise, yeah, and that's it. Yeah. Okay. Splice allows you to remove things in the array at a certain position, and it returns the elements that are deleted, right? So it does it in place, but it tells you what was removed. Okay. And so again, you want to make sure that you know to use it. The second part here is exactly the same with objects. So here the object here is an array of objects, and we have two objects in there with keys first and second. And so we're going through the same way of doing what we did. And you see that here, some of the differences is when you're using descending, then the compare function, you need to tell it how to compare elements 2 by 2. So it takes two arguments and A and B. And here you have the opportunity to say, oh, I want to compare based on the value, or I want to compare based on the keys. Yeah. So I think if you go and just do the printout, and again, those are unique, so you get the result really right away, but try to understand how it works, and at least you can refer back to here if you need to do it. The map, I think we've seen it also, and it's important to see it working in place. The second part is basically the same thing with a specific data set that is here. So if you want, I can try to do the first one. So here we want to do the min key alphabetic using d3.min. So this is the same that we're doing here, I guess. So so min key alphabetic using d3min. Okay, so here you want to put the result and the code here. So I'm going to start putting the code. So this is min equal. So you may want yeah, here it doesn't matter because this is just in the right. This is not executed, so it is not going to interfere the min variable. Our data is data, and we want to do it based on what here? Based on the key, alphabetic. So based on key, right? And because the default is alphabetic, that should work already. So I would take this and go in the browser. So data, I think, is already instantiated. So, right? So you get the right answer. Do you see it? Okay, so you can check in the page, but yeah, you see that here it's in the script section. So this is already available. And then you go through the others that are just a little bit of practice with the previous one, right? Okay, so this is for this one, which I think can take you about 10 minutes. So let's go look at the two. Okay, that's good. We have plenty of time. Okay, so in the two, we're running this code here. So the first thing is to understand the code. And so here you see that there is an answer section. And so it's going to ask you to do something. So the page is running this code. And then we just want to execute what is asked down there and see what it is about. So the code, we see it here. So here is CSS that styles with a class .button, and here a class .group. And you see that what we do here is basically button with HTML. So we have here a class for a group. We have two groups. The first one does a filter, and the other one does a sort. And what gets realized is down here. Yeah. So this is basically what this code is about. Now what we want to do is basically learn how we can style these buttons with D3, so that we can just go on with the exercises and use D3 for even doing the buttons. So we don't have to go and use Bootstrap or something else. So, and at the same time, you see that I put this in groups because I want you to understand what the selection is. So up until now, we talked about D3 makes a selection, and we say that it's something that is similar to an array, but we don't really know, we didn't look into what a selection really is. So now we're going to be able to do this here. So because this is already in the page, D3 is there, you see that you can see it. So you just do like this. And so I'm going to open it. I'm going to do it for a few, so you see what happens. So you see that this is the selection. So you see that the selection it doesn't have just one parent, it has multiple parents. And the reason is that you can have multiple groups. And so this button here has this parent, but this other button, the filter one, has the outer div here that is a different parent, right? And so you need to be able to keep track of those. And then it has a node list here. So here we're asking for everything that is filtered. So we're going to get normally this, we want to select these 3 spans, and the parent should be this div, yeah? So what I ask you to do is that you unfold this. Yeah, I mean, you don't need to go all the way here. And then you copy this into the solution. Okay, so yeah, sorry. Here we're saying filter one. So filter one is just one. That's why we just have one button here. That is the span filter one button. If we had done a select all for the group, then we would have selected the 2 groups and so on. And so here I would go in, where is it? Select or filter. I would paste it there. If you paste and do Command Z or Windows Z, then it puts it at the right place, and then it looks good. Here it is. Okay. So play around with this, because then you understand how things work in a hierarchy with the selection, and we can look at some code that does that after. Okay. And here you see that it's not that simple, because we're selecting groups and then we're selecting the buttons. So we're going to have a selection that is rather complicated, where we have first the groups and then the buttons. In there, if you want, we can see what it looks like. Right, so we get the groups, and inside the groups we get the buttons. And here you see, and we have the 2 parents. There we have the 2 parents because these are for the buttons, as I was saying earlier. And that's how basically D3 keeps track of things. All right. So okay, so there you see that there are some function that you can call on the selection here that we're going to use for doing the transition that are a little bit misleading. So that there is the call that we saw already, and then there is the dot each. Okay. So the dot each invokes a callback function on each element in the selection, while the call executes a callback function on the selection itself. Okay, so you play around with the example so you understand what it means. Because in some case, like for instance, for the each, there is no such a thing as a div, because you're going through each element. But you do have the this that is the current element that you're processing. While the call would work in the similar way as we're using things with data join in different, and so on. So we do it first with HTML, which is useful with the buttons, and then we do it with D3 SVG, which is useful for the plots and implementing the transitions between elements. Okay. So and here it's really cut and paste, and try to understand. If you have question, we can discuss it. So here we start with the general update pattern. So we have a simple example that is more or less what we saw in class. You see with the A, B, C, D. And so what we do is that we have these 3 data sets that are listed here. And what we want is to finish to implement the code so that when we move from year to year to year, we actually are able to do enter, exit, and so on as needed with transitioning that makes sense. Okay. So I can show you what it looks like in the code. It's fairly simple. Okay, here we go. So the code is in here. So I can help you out maybe with the first one. So you get started, but usually what happens that we do things we give you the example for say here the data, one of the data sets, and then we ask that you do it for the others, right? So here we're setting we want to add a color property. Okay, so here we have an array of colors, and we have our data sets. In order to see them with color, we want to attach a property for color. So if we want to do it for the data set 2 and 3, it's fairly easy, right? We just go and cut and paste this. So it's going to be the 2 data set 2, and it's the same thing, right? And data set 3 and data set 3. Okay, so now you want to each time you make changes to make sure that you don't get unexpected end of output. What happened? I don't think this is what I typed. I think that there is already some problem in this page. Okay, so I think that the TA is on the hook for this one. Let's see if we can fix it. Okay, script style. So there is a script or a style that is not closed. So this looks right. This looks right. This looks right. Here we have the script. So maybe we can do like this. Or here we have a div. I think that this div doesn't exist here. Is that right? No. Oh, is it? Okay. Body. No, I don't know. Okay, so when you don't know, you comment everything, and you restart. So this is this div. Okay, so let's do this thing. Okay, so this is good. So it might be in there, and things seem to work. Okay, and then we're going to. Okay, so this is fine. This is fine. Okay, this is still fine. Okay. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so it looks like it's something in the script here that we put that is not good. Okay, so we're getting close. Oh, so it's one parenthesis that is not closed. That's what it is. Yeah, so this is the function. Then the dot on here is not closed. Yes, and then we need to do this. So this closes this one. Okay. Yeah, I think I see what is happening here. Okay. Yeah. So I think we need to repause for this one because so something went weird here. So I think that the TA deleted here a piece of code that was doing this defeat.select, and you see it's not indented correctly. So something has happened here. And this might work, but might not do the right thing. Okay, so we'll repose this one. Yeah, because you see that this is not right. Okay, so we'll repose this one. Sorry. 3, 4. Okay, so hopefully this one works. Okay, that seems right. So this one is how to do smooth transitions on axes. So here you see what needs to happen, and here we have another transition that is not implemented. So we need to go and implement it. So in the first one, we're changing the domain. We're doing, so you remember the domain is on the data. So we're changing the range of the data. And the second one is on changing the type of transition that between two types of axes. I think this is between linear and log axis, okay? And this one is very easy. It just asks you, yeah. So this just look at the class and try to explain it, so that you get to see how this is implemented here to transition the axes. And here you want to use a log scale as opposed to a linear scale, because here you see that we're going from you can see it here, call, right? So we're setting up the axis either with axis 1 or with EX1 with the scale 1, or X2 the scale 2. And they're both scale linear, you see, exactly the same thing. So how do you change the scale 2 to a log scale? Can somebody help me out quickly? How do you change a scale linear to a log scale? Huh? Yeah, what do I need to write? Huh? Log scale log, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So these are the two things that you usually end up doing with axes. You change the type or the domain. The range, we saw it as resizing charts, right? So this one is done in a second. This one is just to finish to implement it. You see that to implement the sorting for temperature and gravity. So I just want to make sure that it works. It's fairly easy. This is ex5.html. Again, this is more for you to look at how the code works. So we give you an example, and then you need to work out the rest. So here you see we sort the bars based on distance. This is the sorting function, and what you need to do is implement it for the other two that are temperature and gravity. So obviously, you just basically just need to copy this in here. I think more or less that should be it, right? If you're not sure of the variable name, okay, you can use the completion sort that by temperature, and yeah, that looks good. So when we sort by temperature, we first sort the array, and we don't need to redo the data join. We just need to change the scale, right? Because the scale is going to replace things. And so that's the only thing that we're doing there. By changing the domain of the scale, so we get the correct order. And then here transition, don't be confused. Transition here is a function that is declared here that sets up the transition on the SVG element that is the bars. So yeah, so you see that now the temperature is working. The button is not working as you would expect, but there is the exercise for the button that you can look at to understand how it works. And there is a piece of code here that we'll need to add somewhere down here. Yeah, and this is missing again. Yeah, here it's missing. Okay, so this one, I think the TA is okay. Also on the hook. So this is doing here you need to do the same thing here, that is to sort, to set up the toggle for temperature, right? And I don't remember what one in gravity. Okay. Hey, can somebody send me a Slack with these two things, EX4, and then here I think we need to add this one here. Okay, and so it again is the same than this one here, where you just need to adapt for the filter. Sorry, for the temperature and the gravity. Okay, so this one, it shouldn't take you long either. And then we have the 6 that is a little bit more complicated and that is very close to what we have for the homework, for the assignment, and it is here. Okay, so this one, once you get it to work, is going to set all the data, the 4 closer to the sun, the 4 that are farther away, and is going to transition those that need to exit out and rescale, so that we only see those that are needed. If you're on the closer one, then you can remove Earth. In that case, you will have Jupiter that is going to come in. Yeah, as part of the 4 closest to the sun. And then the other part is basically a build up on what we just saw with the distance to the sun, temperature, and gravity, which I won't redo, but that's basically the same code. And this is, so both of them, so you see this one doesn't change the axis, but it changes the labels on the bars. The previous one was changing the axis to do also the transition, but the axis was being transitioned as well, right? So for the homework, you may want to do maybe the first one, But this one is similar in terms of the operations that you will want to do where you're subsetting and you're filtering. Sorry, ordering and filtering the data. And that's what is asked for the homework. Okay. Questions? No questions. Let's see how much we have. Yeah, we have 8 minutes, so we can. What do you want to do? You need more information on AX. You need more information on this one. So we're going to try to do this by Wednesday. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll make sure that you get the correct code tonight. I'm going to supervise that. Yeah, let me look at the code actually for this one so that we make sure that that is correct. So this is the 6. Okay, if you want, we can start doing the 6 so we see how it works. So the console log there are just there to help you out. You see that we print the all year. So if you look at the code, it's fairly clear what is going on. So we use the margin convention. This is all margin convention set up. We have a scale band for the bars, a scale linear for the y-axis. Here we set up a delay for the bars because we don't want all the bars to start moving at once because otherwise it's impossible for people to follow. So we just delay by this is I times 50 in milliseconds, and we just use this as a function in the region when we set up the transition so that each datum is going to be sequenced based on its index. Then we have arrays here that we're going to use to keep track of the different elements. So all is all the planets. The closer are the 4 closer, the farther are the 4 farthest, and Earth is just a pointer to the Earth object that you can get to using array find. So can somebody give me the code here to do the array find? So obviously we need to first, okay, so so here we're loading the data, right, as TSV, and the data are available in all. And so here with data and all, is it the same thing or is it different? It's the same thing, right? It's the same object. So here we can either use data or all. We're going to use data just for the fun of it. And then we're going to say find. So if you look in the previous examples, here you can specify what is the element that you want to find. So we want to find something where we need to go and look at the data, where the name is where is our planet in this thing? Earth. So it's Earth with capital, right? So I can just copy it from here. Earth name. Right, and then you if you want you can you can see it there, right? So yeah, that's not more complicated than that. So you do the same thing once you do the array operations, and this is going to be a snap. you do the closer, the farther, and then try to understand a little bit how the code sort works. So here you see this is the initial state. So we're going to filter all of them, and we're going to sort by distance. So the sort function here is setting up the buttons, and yeah, they're just setting up the status for the button and toggle the distance here for the sorting mode. Yeah. Okay. Function are in here. The toggle sort is somewhere at the bottom, I think. Yeah, it's here, right? And here we're tracking by whatever we want to sort by. So here I think we're sorting by distance. So that's how we just change the color, right, for that button. It's a similar code that is in the previous example. And here you want to implement the same so this is toggling the sort buttons. Here you want to do the same basically with the filter button, and it's just a copy and paste, and you need to use a different class basically for filter, that is .filter. It tells you there. And similar to what we did last time with the responsive charts, there is a function that redraws things as they need to be drawn. But here you see that this is done not just with a simple data join, but is done with the update, enter, and exit selections. We don't have the merge because we don't need it here, right? But you see that the order is the same as the general update pattern that we saw in class. So we do two of those, one for the bars, and then we do one for the names, because they want the names to follow the bars. Yeah. And here, similar to the previous example, we have a transition function that is going to be set up. So I think that you'll see in the previous example what happens if you don't, if you use the chaining syntax here between two different objects that you want to transition here, the bars and the name. And you remember that you can only transition one, set up one transition, one object. And so obviously, if you don't have the variables, then it's not going to work correctly. And the draw, I think, is just for the initial setup. And that's the code that is done here. So the redraw, there are things that are not needed, because once we set up the style, we don't need to change it. The only thing that we need to do is add or remove bars, right? Okay. So you get it easy because people actually did this from scratch with almost just I don't think the first batch they even had a piece of code to go by. Yeah, but here really what we're trying to do is to get to a situation where you're able to use some code that is already there, and or reuse code for doing something, to customize code for your needs. Okay. So I'm not expecting that you write here this 10 pages pieces of code to do complicated stuff from scratch. At least not at this point. All right. Thank you.